Hello, everybody. Ron Callis here with another episode of Automation Unplugged. It is Wednesday, March 27th, a little bit after 12:30 p.m. If you are watching or listening live, thank you for doing so. If you're watching on replay, thank you for doing that as well. I am going to jump over here to Facebook just to make sure technology is behaving and that we are, in fact, live streaming in. So bear with me here just for one moment. Let's see if technology is cooperating today. And it does appear we are working, which is fantastic. So I hope you are doing well. I hope you're having a great week. This is a big week for me. Tomorrow's my birthday. So you can send all of your gifts and presents and cash. Just send that over to my office. Go to onefirefly.com and find out where to send those nice gifts. Just joking, but I am going to actually reward myself this week, and I'm going to show all of you how I'm going to reward myself for living another year. I'm going to put up on the screen. So I'm actually going to be spending tomorrow, my birthday, through Saturday at a first robotics competition. So I'm going to be out there at the West Palm Beach Convention Center. Historically, and for the last 6 years, I've been a mentor of a robotics team out of Hollywood, Florida. And this year I'm changing things up, and I'm actually going to be acting as one of the judges. And there's teams flying in from all over the world to compete at this event. There'll be 65 high school robotics teams competing. And if you want to check that out, you can go to First in Florida, as you see there on the website. Also, as a side note, if you want to be philanthropic and help yourself, on that website, there is a link, and you can pay $25 for a raffle ticket, and that donation will go to support the regional event. And you also will be entered to win a free 2-year lease on a nice Nissan Pathfinder, which is pretty cool. So that drawing is going to happen at the event this week. And so you have pretty good odds, probably 1 in a few hundred chance of winning that vehicle, which is pretty fun. All right, so let's jump right into it. So I have a fantastic guest, as you saw on the artwork there on Facebook. I have the one and only Eric Thies of DSI. Eric, how are you?
I'm great, Ron. How are you? Happy birthday.
Hey, thank you. I'm spending it here with you. Or today's the pre-birthday. Tomorrow's the official. But thank you. I appreciate that.
How old are you?
How old am I? I don't know. How old do I look?
That's a tough one. I'm afraid.
Yeah, I know. That always gets in trouble, right?
But your listeners want to know.
They do want to know. Listeners want to know. I got to actually figure it out. How old am I? I was born in 1978. So what does that mean? I'm 41, maybe?
You're a baby. There you go.
Baby. I am a baby. Let's keep telling at least I act like a child most of the time.
I tell everyone that I keep my youthful appearance because I dress like I'm 14 years old. That's my trick. It's my secret.
It's all in it's in the wardrobe.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas my wardrobe, as we were talking before we went live, is as everyone has noticed that is watching these videos, it's gotten simpler and simpler. I'm wearing the same One Firefly t-shirt almost 5 days a week now. So I just love the lack of thinking involved in my wardrobe selections these days.
You're like Zuckerberg or that crazy chick that ran Theranos. Either one.
Yeah, she always wore the turtlenecks, right?
Right, but the same thing every day, just like you.
Same thing every day. Keep it simple. All right. So, Eric, for those of you, if there is a chance they do not know you and who you are, first of all, where are you coming to us from today?
Lovely Los Angeles, California, where it's about 72 degrees and sunny out.
Isn't it that way year round?
Pretty much.
Yeah, it's
pretty much.
I would say people talk about Florida weather. Well, some of the less informed talk about Florida weather being, paradise. And I was like, no, you got to go to Southern California. That's where you have weather that is paradise year round.
We're pretty fortunate.
I was talking to actually an integrator that had just visited South Miami last week for a project he was gonna I guess do, and he talked about the terrible humidity. And I was like, man, I think it was in the 70s last week, and it's March. There's no humidity. This is not really the humidity yet. The humidity comes in, about May, and then it's entirely unbearable. But for him, he was suffering. He wasn't used to it. So, Mr. Eric, our audience is integrators, it's owners, operators, it is people at all levels of integration companies, it is rep firms, it is manufacturers, it is the CI industry. Can you fill them in on your background? Let's just maybe start there, and I've got hopefully a number of fun topics for us to engage in.
Yeah, sure.
Let's tell the audience who you are.
Okay, so my first, I'm Eric Thies. I run a company called DSI in Los Angeles. We're a high-end integration firm. That's my main job. That's how I pay my bills. I also am involved in a group called the Guild. I'm involved in a group called Azione, a buying group that you may know. I sit on the board of that, and I'm involved in a group called the Home Technology Association, HDA certified. Woo woo. So that's me now. How I got into this business is my first foray into CI was when I wanted my MTV as a child in the 80s, and I wired my house for cable TV. It was the only way my dad said I could get it, so I did my own installation, didn't ground anything, blew up all the TVs in my house when a lightning strike hit. I wasn't good, so that was my... After that, no one would let me use tools. So I went to college at Penn State, go to Nittany Lions. Then I got into retail after that. So I worked for a company called Highland Superstores in Chicago, selling AV. That company went under, moved to LA, worked for a company called The Good Guys for a period of time. And then in '94, I started DSI because I saw a big opportunity in the 94 was when DirecTV came out, and I saw a big opportunity in the installation market for that product. I was really excited about that. And so originally that's how DSI started. I started as basically a satellite installation company for probably the first 2 or 3 years of business in the early 90s. And then, and then here we are now.
All right, well, let's fill in some of the blanks between 1994 and the present. There's
Okay.
a couple of years in the intermediary there. As your business, let's just say you've been running DSI in one form or another for the last, what is that, 6, 8, 25 years?
It's been a long time. I don't know. It's all.
I was just doing the math in my head. I used to be good at math, but
it's 20 plus. I don't expect a guy who doesn't know how old he is to be able to do that kind of math. So
yeah, fair enough. I have really smart, talented people.
Yeah.
Here.
So if you want to look at the course history of DSI, is started in '94. And really, I didn't.
By the way, Hagai just jumped in and he says, "Hola from LAX."
There we go. Hi, Hagai. So started, anyway, so the first 3 or 4 years of DSI, I wasn't really quite sure what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was pretty young, 27 when I started it. And, about 4 years in, I said, okay, this is kind of fun. This is going to be my career. I'm going to do this. And then once that switch was turned on, the goal was really to say, okay, if I'm going to do this, what is it going to take to be the best integrator in Los Angeles? So, we kind of looked at what other people were doing and not doing, build a company, grew it to be the largest in Los Angeles, won a lot of awards. We have more awards, I think, than anyone else on the earth. Sorry.
I don't want to come back to that because
I'll let you know that.
Well, a piece of that is that you actually knew enough early to not only do, to grow your business and make money and be successful, but you knew to actually enter awards, which is a marketing play.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
How did, so many really interesting firms around the country, as a marketer, at One Firefly, I'm twisting their arm saying, guys, you need to photograph your projects and you need to enter awards. It's great PR publicity and it's going to help you. How did you know that 20 years ago to do that? Where did that come from?
I mean, inherently, we wanted to differentiate ourselves in any way possible, and that was, that was a way we saw we could prove. There are companies that have been in the market longer than us. There are companies that we entered the market; they were already in the industry for 10 or 20 years. So we wanted to prove that we were as good or better. And one of those ways is, hey, we win a lot of awards. We entered, we've done some nice projects. We kind of got lucky and won some awards. But yeah, no, differentiator. I give a lot of that credit to Josh Christian, now running HTA, but used to be with our firm. And, he was a guy who was like, that's what his job was, differentiate us, make us different. He did most of the marketing for the company in certainly the early 2000s.
And flash forward, there was you've continued to grow the company. There was this little side experiment called VIA.
Yeah, so in 2013, we got approached to be part of a national roll-up, which a lot of people know about. And for those who don't, it was called VIA. It was going to be the biggest, baddest installation company in the world and, go coast to coast and maybe worldwide. Some of the guys who were a part of it went to be the executives of that company. My role was I helped a little bit with marketing, and I stayed in LA and did my thing here in LA, which I like to do. That didn't end well. That company went into receivership in 2015. So we basically sold the company in 2013. In 2015, VIA went into receivership, and we purchased all the rights to DSI back. In 2015, relaunched DSI in November of 2015, and now we're on year 4 of what we call DSI 2.0.
And so what are common types of projects? Are you entirely residential, or do you do any commercial, and what type of projects do you take on, just for our audience so they understand kind of what you're looking at day to day?
We only maybe do about 10% on our biggest year in commercial, 90% residential. And we're really focused on ultra luxury high end. So, our target is a project $500,000 or north of that. As a typical project for that, we try to limit the amount of projects we do, try to say no more than we say yes. Our goal is to just work on the most interesting projects with the most interesting architects, designers, builders, and clients. And that's our niche. That's our focus. We no longer have grand plans of wanting to have 100 people and running around. It's more about quality versus quantity and doing really good work for a smaller amount of people. That's our focus.
By the way, I want to speak to our Facebook audience that's live with us right now. If you have questions for Eric, I've got a whole list of things I want to jump into and discuss with him and let you guys hear his thoughts and ideas around. But I also want your questions to be answered. So feel free to type into the comments. Also, if you appreciate this conversation and value it and want others to see it, please like this and share this so that others in your orbit will have an opportunity to ultimately hear this conversation. I did just get a comment, Eric. Liz says, awesome to hear more about Eric and his background. It's great working with DSI and HTA. And Liz is actually a member of One Firefly, and so she's giving you a shout out. I think she does.
Thanks, Liz. With you. You're on the payroll to say that, but thanks anyway.
She is on the payroll. Yeah, that is true. But Liz, nonetheless, we appreciate you throwing a comment up there.
No, Liz is helping us make our website more visible to the general public, and she does a great job. I'm appreciative of that, and you too, Ron. Your work is great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I do want to throw up on the screen. I got to find it. There it is. Okay. Let's see if I can get technology to behave. Of course, it's a little wonk. There we go. So, Eric, you wrote a story just recently. Looks like this was published March 7th. And this is in CE Pro magazine on their website. I'm assuming it'll be in print probably in the next couple of months would be my guess. And it's specifically about a looming market correction. So just at a high level, you're in LA, you're in Southern California. you guys generally have a pretty spectacular, microeconomy there that's larger than some countries.
Yep.
So why, if you're in such a good marketplace, are you the person that then is talking about a pending market correction? What do you see coming?
Well, I will give our mutual friend Richard Gleiks of Azione a shout out here, because he's the one that's been talking about this for probably a year and a half. And so I think all of us at Azione in these conferences kind of half listen to him, half are saying, oh, maybe there's something to it, half are saying, yeah, Richard's a little crazy, who knows. But now as I talk to more and more integrators across the country, I've got lots of friends that run businesses like mine. A lot of the feedback I'm getting is, I'm a little kind of worried about my pipeline in 2019 or 2020. The business is really strong now, but I'm looking forward. And smart guys I respect the industry are saying that maybe some less opportunities are coming across their desks, and so that got my attention. And realistically, we've been on this amazing, hockey stick ramp of growth, right? And it just cannot go on forever. So, I went through the 2008 recession. It was painful. I'd liked, some companies that are out there that started after that, they didn't have to live through that. So I guess a contribution back to, my fellow CI guys is that, here's a couple things you should pay attention to now when you don't really need it, because the economy is still pretty good. But you might, in 6 months or a year, you might have some difficulties in your business. And I wanted to say, here's a couple ways to fight that off.
Could you give us a highlight or a synopsis here of what maybe some of those primary points are?
Yeah, so, in our business, we're fed by industry partners. So if industry partners slow down, if they have less opportunities, we have less opportunities. So, one of the things is get more industry partners, right? So if go out there, you need to do some marketing. You need to go out and meet some new people that if you want to keep your staff intact, right? So everybody's been hiring. So in a big overview, let's say you got 3 options. You can trim your staff down for whatever this new revenue you've got is, which is not fun, and it's hard to find those people again. So that's kind of the third choice. You can be better at closing opportunities that you get, so increase your close ratio. We'll talk about what you can do there. So instead of having a 30% closing ratio, bump that up to 50. How do you do that? Because that'll make all the difference in replacing that revenue. And your other thing is, like, you got to market, right? You got to get out there and talk about your company. Everyone ignored marketing for the past, I don't know,
forever,
10 years, maybe never, right? You got to do something. There's too many. I go out to, I'm looking at some competitors' websites that are either a 404 messages popping up, or under construction, or they're in Flash. They have pictures of installs they did in 2002. All the stuff you need to sort of pay attention to. So that's kind of a high level of what I'm.
So, and I'm on that last point, not to make it self-serving, but I will just zoom in on the marketing concept, because I see that as two sides of the coin. And maybe this is the skeptic in me speaking. Mm-hmm. And that is, I see that you could say the market might be entering a recession. I think we might already be in a recession, right? I think that's a fair statement. We might be there, or maybe.
I call it a recession because that implies a super deep. I don't know the technical definition, but I think the implication
downturn
is, a serious economic problem. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I just think we're gonna roll down, maybe 10, 15, 20% from where we are, and still that's a great place to be, historically, right? That's a great level of business out there to get. But anyway, go ahead.
What do you say to those? I would think, based on that logic argument and the argument you make in this story, is that dealers should be mindful of their brand, the awareness of their brand, their websites, the lettering of their vehicles, their building relationships and rapport, certainly from a biz dev standpoint, out with architects, designers, builders.
Yep.
And that's very logical, and I appreciate that, and I agree with that. On the flip side, I am concerned that as markets turn down, that many small businesses that are called integrators are then in fact going to say, well, marketing's the thing I'm going to pull budget from.
Yeah.
And what would you say to those people that are listening and or watching, and they go, well, that is what in fact, as recent as this morning, I got an email from a client in Texas, and he's like, hey, market's tough. I need to peel back my program. And where in my head, I'm going, you need to be doing the opposite, not when times get tough, shrinking it. But
100%. So if you need more revenue, you do not stop marketing. That's not what you do. You increase your marketing spend. You concentrate more on it. Unless you've got some other way to get revenue that doesn't cost you anything. So it's counterintuitive, and I think it's being penny wise and pound foolish to cut your marketing spend on a down economy. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. That's when you need to ramp.
I concur. I don't have it up, but I'm going to pull it up now. But I'm going to ask you to start describing kind of your role and how you envision HTA playing out for our industry. You birthed that idea, I think, with some others. You've gained sponsorship and support from leading manufacturers. And as you mentioned at the onset of the interview, Josh Christian, former employee of yours at DSI, is now leading the charge at HTA. Can you describe what that is and your role in that?
Yeah, so for those who don't know what HTA is Home Technology Association. And myself and many others recognize the need for some sort of industry standard in our industry. There's so many great companies out there, and they're losing jobs to really not great companies, terrible companies. And the consumer perception of a lot of us integrators is that we're very much the same, right? And they really don't know how to differentiate between a great company, a good company, and a terrible company. And usually it's a referral from their cousin or their interior designer or their architect or whatever, and they just roll with a purchasing decision. It could be hundreds of thousands of dollars just based on a referral, without ever really looking at the qualifications. And it may be a great guy that got referred to them, and he might be really great at doing, hanging a Sony TV with a Sonos soundbar and making that work. But, if he's walking into a $8 million estate that's all sorts of automation, DCI screening room, he's out of his league, right? And it's very hard for that guy to say no to that level of project and income. And he could be a great guy, he could be a hard worker, he could be honest, but
just out of his league from delivering based on what that client deserves or needs.
So one, there needs to be a standard of, just a standard in an industry. Do you know technology? Do you service your clients, and what's your industry reputation, right? We need at least that standard in industry to separate the good companies from the bad companies, and a lot of bad companies out there. And that's why largely, customers are very dissatisfied with electronics. And I got very frustrated with walking into a client's home and then you're saying, I don't want any technology in my house. My last house was a nightmare. It didn't work. Only my 14-year-old kid could operate it. I couldn't turn anything on. And particularly if it was a control system, so many bad control system experiences out there. So really bad for our industry when there's so many people out there delivering bad experiences. We needed a way to give consumers, a tool to see some sort of dividing line of who's good, who's bad, certification standard. Bunch of people worked on this and developed it. I'm not really taking any credit for it. And it's a great standard. It's really, really good. And so anyway, my role in it was I was one of the ones that started, lit the fire to make this happen. My role now is, Josh Christian is the guy that runs this thing, and I'm his humble servant. I do a lot of work for him. Unfortunately, I don't get paid, but I don't know, maybe someday. But it's a passion project of mine. I'm happy to devote the time to it. It's we're having a lot of fun, and we're trying to get the word out that there's a standard, there's a way to differentiate yourself in our business. This ties in right into this downward economy, right? So if the economy's going down, and there's a lot of guys, and we'll call them trunk slimmers out there, that are just cutting prices to get work. Well, how do you compete against that? Because you can't come to their level of pricing. You really got to differentiate yourself, and you got to make a client understand that you have a better company than this guy. And I think HTA certification is a great third-party validation to say, no, these guys are the real deal. They are worth more money. Hire them.
The budget calculator has gained so much buzz out there in the marketplace. I can tell you from my perspective, it's a hit.
Yeah, it's really cool.
What is it? So I have it up on the screen. People see me clicking around in it. Why did you guys conceive to add this and make this available to anyone that visits it?
So overall, with any customer who's building a house, they have a really good idea of what things like kitchens and bathrooms cost and pools and things like that, but they are incredibly clueless about what technology costs. And usually when you deliver those prices, it's just bad news. It's really bad news to them, because it's always, on average, about 3 times more than they expect to pay. So then, they start to doubt you, and then they want to shop you and to make sure, you've got the best price, or you're being fair to them, or you're not ripping them off because they don't understand it. So there needed to be a tool that a client could use to go and say, I want this, 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 and then it spit out a range. Okay, well, if those are the things you want, and if your house is this big, it's from here to here, right? This is your budget range. HTA obviously gives, and here's a bunch of people that are really good at delivering that level of project. So the tool is fantastic to get that conversational price out of the way. So, a lot of dealers, and I'm sending my clients to this before our first meeting. I'm saying, okay, before you meet me, before we talk about it, go there. It's really easy. It takes like 5 minutes to build a budget. Click off a bunch of stuff. Let me know what it came up with. And then, I want you to have a kind of understanding what these things cost before we talk about it. And so, a client will show up because, okay, well, based on that, I think I'm in the $200,000 to $350,000 range. Like, okay, great. Are you comfortable with that budget? If that's what it costs, I guess that's what it costs. This thing spit it out. Home Technology Association, if they say it's that, I guess it's that. So yeah, let's talk about that range and what I can get. And now it's not me delivering the bad news, which is wonderful, right? It's a valid organization that gives a budget and takes price. It doesn't completely take it out of the equation, but it becomes less of an obstacle in your conversation. You really start talking about what they want and features of products and fun stuff, not about.
Eric, I've got a question here. I'm going to throw it up on the screen. Joey, Joseph Kolchinsky from One Vision. Joey is saying, Eric, would you consider including service support in that calculator? Would help client understand total cost of ownership and set the industry up to talk about support more confidently. That's interesting.
Yeah, we definitely have considered that, and it's not in this version. Part of the thing is there's so many things we could include, right? We can include lighting fixtures and all sorts of other services. We try to the goal was to really boil it down to the essential things that clients think about. Service and support is a super important item, but yeah, it's been considered. Will it make the next version? I don't know, Joey. Well,
a question for you, just to stay on that topic, Eric, just out of curiosity. We as an industry install these systems. These systems, cost a chunk of money, and we make clients happy and we make their lives better. These things do need to be serviced. Is the analysis of the way that integrators are prepared to serve the customer after the sale, is that part of the grading system that you guys, I say you guys, I know you're one of the founders, you're not running it. Is that, to your knowledge, what HTA is looking at, or is that a factor?
So important. Yeah, so important. And it's a big part. So in fact, Joey of One Vision was one of the guys we reached out to say, hey, what are the most important things we should be looking at at a firm, in terms of service? So HTA looks at your service policies, whether you have after-hours service or not. Every aspect of how a client services or how a dealer services a client is looked at. It's one of the three main components of certification. So super important.
Awesome. Well, we don't have a lot of time remaining, so I want to jump to a couple of more topics, if you will allow me, Eric.
Sure.
You are also a founding member of the Guild.
Well, I'm not a founding member, but I am a member. So
okay, you're not a founding member.
I got to
give
props to the three founders. The three founders of the Guild is Dennis Jakes of Maverick, who everyone knows, and some fear. And
some fear. I've been trying to get him on the show. We've had him scheduled a few times, and there's been scheduling conflicts. But hopefully, I'll have to get Elizabeth back on that to try to get him on here.
It'd be a great show if you get him on. Dennis is so incredibly smart. But Dennis of Maverick, the guys at Opus, Peter and David of Opus and in Connecticut, and Kim Michaels of Electronic Environments, those are the three founding members of the Guild. They started it, I don't know, quite some time ago. And it was kind of an information sharing site for those guys in the Northeast. They'd run into each other on projects, but they weren't really competitors. And they wanted to, all smart guys, all have great businesses. And, they wanted a vehicle to kind of more formally share information and kind of open the kimono to each other with best business practices. And that's how the Guild started. And then, Dennis has friends, and Kim has friends, and David and Peter have friends. So, hey, why don't we get this guy in, this guy, and I had known those guys for quite some time. We're friends with them, and they recruited me into this organization.
Is this really an idea sharing and a knowledge sharing group? Like, the word that's coming to mind is like a club or almost like a skull and bones group, where you gotta know someone to be invited and go through the initiation. Is that what it is?
Yeah, we have secret handshakes.
Secret handshakes, yep. Nice. Secret events that no one knows about.
Yeah, and up until now, it sort of has been a kind of a behind closed doors type of thing. But at some point, we said, well, listen, we share a business, we share clients, we share industry partners. Let's sort of establish this formal relationship between our companies, so that we can more easily hand off clients from city to city. But the primary, everyone asks me, well, is this another VIA? Is this a roll up? Is this a merger? It's not that at all. That's, I think, the number one question. It's really a group that of like-minded guys who are very into high-end CI work and craftsmanship and great customer service, and we're all like-minded guys that want to get together and make our businesses better, and we just share an enormous amount of information, and our people also share with each other. So I think it really started with the buying groups. You go to a buying group conference, you meet the owners, you have great conversations, and then you go back to your organization, and it's hard to share that with your people. And this gives us a deeper level of sharing, because our programmers talk to each other, our project managers talk to each other, our designers talk to each other, and we can have little educational sessions, just for our group. It's just a deeper level of buying group networking and information sharing, with a smaller group of people. That's really what it is.
Got it. And I appreciate you sharing and, bringing our audience up to speed on what that is.
Nobody cares, but whatever.
Well, you know what? It's interesting. And I think people care, Eric.
Okay.
Go ahead. If you're listening and you care, type into the chat and let Eric know that you care. It'll make him feel good. And it is about Eric feeling good. So go ahead and come on, Joey, help me out. Make a comment about the Guild.
Next time.
Yeah, exactly. So what's going to happen is people are going to listen on the replay, Eric, and then we're just going to have so many comments about them wanting to make sure they care about the Guild.
We'll see.
But all jokes aside, you and I, Eric, are going to be in Bonita Springs, Florida next week for the Azione conference, and you are on the board. And I was voted into the board just this year, and that's interesting. This will be my first board meeting next week, so I'm first in-person board meeting. What, in your opinion, for those listening, what is the role of a buying group? And if people are listening and are not in Azione or ProSource or HTSA or Nationwide or one of BrandSource or one of these other things, who should consider joining a buying group, and what are the main takeaways from your perspective? So
first of all, I think really we've got 3 excellent buying groups in our industry. They're all really, really great. It's hard to make a wrong decision, and I think everyone should be in a buying group.
Hey, by the way, Eric, Joey fulfilled his commitment to me. I love you, Eric, and the guild seems to be doing great things.
Thank you, Joey. So one, get in a buying group. If you're not in a buying group, get in a buying group. And there's 2 primary reasons. The obvious one is that deals are negotiated on your behalf. You just can't negotiate yourself for the most part. So it's the easy button in terms of getting great pricing, right? You might have to shift your brands a little bit to support the group, but overall, I think there's a big benefit there because, it's a lot of time and energy negotiating all these deals with, I think most CI guys may deal with 50 companies all in. It's just a lot of time and energy. You just can't get that kind of volume pricing in any other way. So that's an easy one. The more the hidden benefit or the more valuable, I think, asset is networking with other guys in your industry, commiserating, getting educated, finding out things that you could be doing better, sharing information. And that's my favorite part, So I love going to these meetings and hanging out with other dealers and complaining about rich people and the things we do. It's fun. It's fun. And complaining about whatever it is. You sort of leave those and go, okay, I'm not alone. All right, this is pretty fun.
Eric, a couple rapid fire questions and we're going to wrap up.
Okay.
One, looking forward for the next 12 months, what has you most excited?
From a technology standpoint, what are we talking about? Or just
I'm leaving it very open-ended. What has you most excited about this industry, this business, your business, technology? I know there's clearly concern about the economy ahead. You've expressed that in your article, and you're trying to help others, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, but
I appreciate your message.
To me, that's a fun challenge, right? So, it's going to be fun for the DSI side of me, right? That component of me is that, we're anticipating this time to make some big structural changes in our company and improve our processes and procedures and really invest in how our company runs, which is a fun exercise. And it's as an entrepreneur, it's always fun building something. And I feel like I'm doing a new build, right? So that's going to be fun this year. And also, I'm kind of excited about doing marketing, which I quite frankly ignored for the past, at least 3 years. Haven't invested much time, money, energy in it, and I really enjoy it. So I'm looking forward to getting back into that and, creating more business for myself than I know what to do with. So.
Amen. Your mouth to God's ears.
That's okay.
And for our audience, if you were to offer, I know you've already offered a bunch of advice, but I'm going to kind of close on this point. If you were to offer a singular, let's say, 2 or 3 points, and I'm going to speak to maybe the smaller business, the younger business that maybe hasn't gone through an economic shift in their business life yet. Maybe their business was born after 2008. Yep. And so they don't know what it is to be, have the times of milk and honey and have that pulled back a little bit. What would be a couple of just, very specific pieces of advice?
Don't be overly optimistic, right? A big problem with us when we went into the 2008 recession was we were naive to think that, we could recapture the business that was going to be lost. No one could. It was impossible at that time. So don't be naive. If you aren't good at sales and marketing, and you see yourself heading into a dip and you don't see as many proposals and projects coming your way, make the necessary cuts to your staff, right? This is the time to improve your staff. Everyone, most likely if you grew your staff, you hired some people that weren't really the greatest because you need to get some jobs done. Don't hang on to people like that. It's not doing your company any good, and it's not doing the rest of your employees any good. So that's a big one. Spend some dollars on marketing, get your website in order, meet industry partners, do lunch and learns, do whatever you need to do to get yourself out there in the marketplace a little bit more, and get HTA certified. Come on, differentiate yourself. Tell people you're the best.
And apparently free Bob Kraft. Is that what I see over your right shoulder there?
I mean, come on now.
Let's get the man out of jail. He's not in jail, is he?
I don't know,
but it is funny. Eric, it has been a pleasure to have you on show number 70 for Automation Unplugged. I really appreciate you taking time and carving time out of your schedule to join me.
Happy to do it, Ron.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'll see you next week.
You will. Look forward to seeing you in Florida.
Likewise. All right, gang, there you have it. The one and only Eric Thies. He is an icon in our industry. He has seen it all, done it all. He is, I think, a really interesting case study in craftsmanship and really owning your craft and being an expert, and his reputation precedes him, and I'm honored to have had him on the show. And I'm honored to, for example, be sitting on the Azione board with Eric. It's very powerful. It's pretty cool. So on that note, gang, next time I will have the full lineup of all of our guests for the month of April. We will not be doing a show next week, as I will be traveling and I'll be at the Azione conference Tuesday through Friday. So I'm sorry I will miss you, but we will catch up the week thereafter. And again, if you're listening on replay, don't forget to like and share this content with your friends. And until next time, thank you, everybody. See you soon.